Sophia's fingers trembled as she clutched the locket in her palm, tears streaming down her face. The magnificent black stallion nudged her gently with his muzzle, his intelligent eyes seeming to understand her pain. "Eclipse, how could you say those things to me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. The horse snorted softly, then turned his head toward the manor in the distance where Harrison Bennett, her adoptive father, stood at the window with an expression of regret already dawning on his face. What Sophia didn't know was that the simple locket Eclipse had just brought her contained a truth so explosive it would shatter the foundations of the Bennett empire and reveal why Harrison had always kept her at arm's length. A truth that would change everything. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun filtered through the expansive windows of the Bennett estate, casting golden light across the marble floors of the grand foyer. Harrison Bennett stood in his study, a cup of black coffee cooling on his mahogany desk as he examined the quarterly reports from his technology empire. His face, weathered with the lines of countless business battles won and lost, remained impassive as his eyes scanned the numbers. The Bennett Technology stock was up 17%. Another successful quarter. A gentle knock interrupted his concentration. "Come in," he called, not bothering to look up from the papers. The door opened, and Sophia Bennett, his 17-year-old adopted daughter, stepped inside. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore riding clothes, jodhpurs, boots, and a fitted jacket. Unlike Harrison's stern demeanor, her face was animated with excitement. "Dad, I've been waiting for 20 minutes. Are you ready for a ride?" she asked, her voice tinged with hope. Harrison glanced up briefly, his expression unchanging. "Ride? You promised, remember? Last week when you missed my equestrian competition, you said you'd make it up to me with a morning ride today." Sophia's voice carried the practiced patience of someone used to disappointment, but still clinging to optimism. Harrison sighed heavily, sitting down his pen. "Sophia, I can't possibly ride today. The Berlin merger is falling apart, and I have to be on a conference call in 30 minutes. He gestured to the stack of papers before him. "Besides, I'm sure you can ride on your own. You've been doing it since you were 10. The light dimmed in Sophia's eyes, but she nodded, having expected this response. It was the story of their relationship, promises made, promises broken, all in service to Bennett Technologies. "Of course, I understand," she said, her voice flat. "Maybe next weekend?" Harrison was already looking back at his reports. "Perhaps. We'll see how things go." Sophia lingered for a moment, hoping for something more. An apology, a word of affection, anything, but Harrison had already retreated back into his world of spreadsheets and corporate strategy. As she turned to leave, Harrison called out, "Oh, and Sophia, Mrs. Reynolds mentioned your calculus grade has slipped to a B+. I expect you to bring that up before the end of the semester. The Bennett name demands." "Excellence." Sophia paused, her back to her father, her hand on the doorknob. "Yes, Dad. I'll work on it." She closed the door quietly behind her and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. Over the years, she had built a wall around her heart, a protection against Harrison's constant disappointment and criticism. But each dismissal, each broken promise still managed to chip away at it. Outside in the hallway, Sophia composed herself before heading toward the stables. The Bennett estate stretched over 50 acres of prime Connecticut countryside, with manicured gardens, a tennis court, an indoor pool, and a state-of-the-art equestrian facility. Harrison had spared no expense in building his kingdom, a testament to his rise from middle-class origins to tech billionaire. The only thing missing was warmth. As she walked down the grand staircase, Sophia passed a series of photographs chronicling Harrison's business triumph, shaking hands with presidents and prime ministers, cutting ribbons at new Bennett Technologies facilities around the world, receiving various business awards. Tucked almost apologetically among them was a single photo of Sophia's adoption day 12 years ago. 5-year-old Sophia, with wide eyes and a tentative smile, stood beside Harrison, who looked uncomfortable in the role of new father. Sophia barely remembered her life before the Bennett estate. Her mother had died when she was very young, and after a brief period in foster care, Harrison had adopted her. The story he told was simple. He had known her mother peripherally through business connections and felt obligated to help when he learned of the orphan child. Sophia had spent years trying to decipher what peripherally meant and why a man with no interest in children would adopt one out of mere obligation. Outside, the spring air was crisp and fresh. The estate's gardens were coming alive with new blooms, a riot of colors tended to by a small army of gardeners. Sophia walked the familiar path to the stables, her sanctuary on the vast property. The stable manager, Oliver, greeted her with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his kind eyes. In his late 60s, Oliver had been with the Bennets since before Sophia's arrival and had taught her everything she knew about horses. "Morning, Miss Sophia," he said, tipping his worn cap. "Thought you'd be riding with Mr. Bennet today." Sophia shook her head. "Change of plans. He's busy with work." She tried to keep the disappointment from her voice. Oliver's smile faded slightly. "Ah, well. Eclipse has been waiting for you. Got him all saddled up for your ride." At the mention of Eclipse, Sophia's mood lightened. Eclipse was her horse, a magnificent black Frisian with an intelligent gaze and gentle temperament. Harrison had purchased him for her 15th birthday, one of the few times he'd remembered without prompting from his assistant. She followed Oliver into the stable, the familiar scent of hay and horses enveloping her. Eclipse stood in his stall, his coat gleaming in the sunlight that streamed through the windows. At the sight of Sophia, he nickered softly. "Hello, beautiful," Sophia murmured, approaching his stall. She reached out to stroke his velvet muzzle, and Eclipse leaned into her touch. "Ready for a ride?" Oliver handed her the reins. "He's been restless all morning, needs a good run." "That makes two of us," Sophia said, with a small smile. She led Eclipse out of the stable and mounted him with practiced ease. The horse shifted beneath her, eager to be off. "Be back before lunch," Oliver called as they set off. "Cook's making that pasta you like." Sophia waved in acknowledgement and guided Eclipse toward the wooded trails that bordered the property. Once they were clear of the manicured lawns, she gave him his head, and Eclipse broke into a gallop, his powerful muscles moving in perfect rhythm beneath her. The wind whipped through Sophia's hair as they raced along the trail, and for a few blessed moments, she forgot about Harrison's dismissal, the constant pressure to be perfect, the emptiness of the grand house she called home. On Eclipse's back, she was free. They rode for nearly an hour, exploring the trails that wound through the woods and around the small lake on the property. Eventually, they slowed to a walk, both horse and rider content in the peaceful surroundings. As they approached the lake's edge, Sophia caught sight of a familiar figure sitting on a bench overlooking the water. Grace Chen, Harrison's executive assistant, was absorbed in something on her tablet. Grace looked up as Sophia and Eclipse approached. In her early 40s, Grace had been with Harrison for over a decade and was one of the few people he seemed to genuinely respect. She was also one of the few adults at the estate who treated Sophia as more than just Harrison Bennett's daughter. "Sophia," Grace called, waving her over. "Beautiful day for a ride." Sophia dismounted and led Eclipse to the bench. "I thought you'd be in the conference call with Dad." Grace shook her head. "He postponed it to tomorrow. Something urgent came up with the legal team." She patted the bench beside her. "Join me for a minute?" Sophia tied Eclipse's reins to a nearby tree and sat beside Grace, curious. It wasn't often that Grace sought her out. "How are you doing?" Grace asked, her dark eyes studying Sophia with genuine concern. Sophia shrugged. "Fine, the usual." "Which means your father canceled plans again," Grace said perceptively. Sophia gazed out at the lake, watching a pair of ducks glide across its surface. "It's not a big deal. I'm used to it." Grace was silent for a moment. "Your father is a complicated man, Sophia. He doesn't always show it, but he does care about you." Sophia had heard this refrain many times before from Grace, from Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper, from her various tutors and the household staff. Harrison Bennet cared, he just didn't know how to show it. After 17 years, the explanation had worn thin. "If you say so," Sophia replied noncommittally. Grace seemed to sense her skepticism. "He's under a lot of pressure right now. The Berlin merger is just part of it. There's been some Complications with old business that's resurfaced. This caught Sophia's attention. What kind of complications? Grace hesitated, clearly weighing how much to share. Just some old associates making demands. Nothing for you to worry about. She checked her watch and stood up. I should get back, and you should head in for lunch soon, too. As Grace started to walk away, she paused and turned back. Sophia, I know it's not easy being Harrison Bennett's daughter, but don't give up on him. There's more to your story and his than you know. Before Sophia could ask what she meant, Grace's phone rang. She answered it with a crisp, Chen speaking, and continued up the path toward the house, leaving Sophia with more questions than answers. Eclipse nudged her shoulder gently, drawing her attention back to the present. Sophia stroked his neck, her mind spinning with Grace's cryptic words. What did she mean by, more to your story? Come on, boy, she said to Eclipse. Let's head back. They returned to the stables at a leisurely pace. Sophia's thoughts remained on Grace's words and Harrison's perpetual distance. As she dismounted and began to unsaddle Eclipse, Oliver appeared with a concerned expression. Miss Sophia, your father's been looking for you. Ask that you join him in his study as soon as you return. Sophia frowned. Did he say what it's about? Oliver shook his head. No, miss, but he seemed agitated. That was unusual. Harrison prided himself on his control, rarely displaying strong emotion of any kind. Sophia quickly finished tending to Eclipse and headed toward the main house, worry gnawing at her. The Bennett mansion loomed before her, a modern interpretation of a European chateau with clean lines and vast windows. From the outside, it looked like the epitome of success and luxury. Only those who lived within its walls knew its coldness. Sophia entered through the kitchen, hoping to grab a quick drink before meeting Harrison. Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper, was overseeing the lunch preparations, directing the kitchen staff with practiced efficiency. Ah. Cashing sight of her. Your father is waiting. You'd best go straight up. Can I at least get some water first? Sophia asked, already reaching for a glass. Mrs. Reynolds nodded, her expression sympathetic. Of course, dear. But don't dawdle. He's in quite a state. Sophia filled her glass and drank quickly, wondering what could have Harrison so unsettled. Despite living under the same roof, they often went days without meaningful interaction, their paths crossing only at formal dinners or scheduled meetings disguised as family time. She made her way through the house to Harrison's study, her footsteps echoing on the marble floors. Outside his door, she paused, took a deep breath, and knocked. Enter, Harrison's voice commanded from within. Sophia opened the door to find Harrison standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the estate's front gardens. His back was to her, his posture rigid. You wanted to see me? Sophia asked, closing the door behind her. Harrison turned slowly. His face, usually a mask of calm control, showed signs of strain. Sit down, Sophia. She perched on one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her apprehension growing. Is everything okay? Harrison remained standing, his gaze intense. I received a call from Headmaster Griffith at Westfield Academy today. Sophia's stomach dropped. Westfield was her private school, one of the most prestigious in the country. Oh? She managed, trying to sound casual. He informed me that you've been skipping your advanced mathematics tutorials, 3 sessions in the past 2 weeks. Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet. Care to explain? Sophia felt her face flush. I've been helping with the drama department's spring production. We had extra rehearsals, and they coincided with the tutorials. A play. Harrison's tone made the word sound like something distasteful. You sacrificed your academic advancement for a play. I'm still maintaining an A average in the class, Sophia defended. And I'm the lead in the production. It's important to me. Harrison moved to his desk and picked up a folder. I had Grace pull your complete academic record after speaking with Griffith. He opened the folder and removed several papers. Your grades have been slipping across the board, not dramatically, but enough to be concerning. A in mathematics, B+ in physics. Even your English literature grade, usually your strongest, has dropped to an A. Pret. Sophia fought the urge to roll her eyes. Most parents would be thrilled with such grades, but in Harrison Bennett's world, anything less than perfection was failure. "I've had a lot on my plate this semester," she said evenly. "Advanced placement classes, the play, my equestrian training." "Perhaps that's the problem," Harrison interrupted. "Too many distractions from what truly matters." Sophia stiffened. "My grades are still excellent. I'm still on track for early admission to any Ivy League school." "Excellent is not the Bennett standard," Harrison countered. "Excellence is the minimum expectation." A familiar anger began to simmer in Sophia's chest. "And what exactly is the point of meeting these impossible standards? So I can follow in your footsteps? Become another cog in the Bennett Technologies machine?" Harrison's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, Sophia. I've provided you with every advantage, every opportunity. All I ask in return is that you make the most of them." "No," Sophia said, standing up. "All you ask is that I become a reflection of you. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect ambition. Have you ever once asked what I want?" "You're 17, Harrison dismissed. "What you want and what you need are rarely the same thing." "How would you know?" Sophia challenged, her voice rising. "You've never bothered to find out what I want. You've never shown any real interest in my life, unless it relates to academics or the Bennett name." Harrison's face hardened. "I've given you everything a child could want. This house, your education, that horse you're so fond of, things." Sophia exclaimed. "You've given me things, but you've never given me your time, your attention, your—" She hesitated, the words sticking in her throat. "Your love." A tense silence filled the room. Harrison's expression was unreadable, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "I've given you a life most could only dream of," he said finally. "If that's not enough for you, I don't know what would be." Sophia shook her head, tears threatening. "You don't get it. You never have." She turned to leave, but Harrison's next words stopped her cold. "This tantrum proves my point," he said. "You're behaving like a child, not the adult you're nearly expected to be." Sophia whirled back to face him. "Maybe I am acting childish. Maybe I'm tired of pretending that this arrangement we have is normal, that this cold, empty relationship is all I deserve." Something flashed in Harrison's eyes, anger, certainly, but something else too. Something that looked almost like fear. "You have no idea the sacrifices I've made for you," he said, his voice low and intense. "The complications I've navigated to give you this life." "Sacrifices?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "What sacrifices has the great Harrison Bennett ever made? You live for your work. You breathe for your company. Everything and everyone else is secondary." Harrison slammed his hand down on the desk, causing Sophia to jump. "Enough. I've indulged this disrespect long enough." He straightened, visibly regaining his composure. "You will quit this play. You will attend every tutorial session. You will bring your grades back up to their previous standard. That is not a request." Sophia stared at him, a cold realization washing over her. "You really don't care about what I want at all, do you?" "What I care about," Harrison said deliberately, "is ensuring that you have the future you deserve. A future I've worked tirelessly to secure for you. A future I never asked for." Sophia cried. "Why did you even adopt me if all I am to you is another project to perfect? Another acquisition for Bennett Enterprises?" The words hung in the air between them, razor-sharp and dangerous. Harrison went very still, his face paling slightly. "You want to know why I adopted you?" he asked, his voice suddenly quiet. "Because I made a promise. A promise I've honored at great personal cost. But there are days, Sophia, when your ingratitude makes me question that decision." The words struck like physical blows. Sophia took a step back, her eyes wide. "What are you saying?" Harrison turned away, looking out the window again. "Go to your room. We'll discuss your academic remediation plan tomorrow." "No," Sophia whispered, then louder. "No. You don't get to say something like that and then dismiss me. What promise? What cost? for once in your life, just tell me the truth. Harrison's shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn around. The truth is that I've given you everything, and it's still not enough. The truth is that maintaining this family has been more burden than I anticipated. Burden. The word echoed in Sophia's mind, each repetition more painful than the last. Is that all she was to him? A burden? An obligation he regretted? I see, she said, her voice suddenly calm, though she felt anything but. Well, I wouldn't want to be a burden any longer. She turned and walked to the door, half hoping that Harrison would call her back, would apologize, would say he didn't mean it. But the study remained silent behind her as she pulled the door closed. In the hallway, Sophia leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe through the tightness in her chest. Burden. The word seemed to follow her, whispering in her ears as she pushed herself upright and moved toward the grand staircase. She passed Grace in the foyer, but ignored the woman's concerned, "Sophia?" and kept walking. Out through the front doors, down the stone steps, across the circular driveway with its fountain centerpiece. She walked with no destination in mind, only the desperate need to put distance between herself and Harrison's cruel words. Her feet carried her toward the stables, her one true refuge on the estate. But as she approached, she saw Oliver speaking with one of the grooms. She couldn't bear conversation now, couldn't maintain the facade of normalcy when her world was crumbling around her. Changing direction, Sophia headed for the wooded area at the edge of the property. The trees had always provided solace, a place where the Bennett name and all its expectations couldn't reach her. As she entered the woods, the canopy of leaves above filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns on the ground. The sounds of the estate lawn mowers, staff voices, the distant hum of traffic beyond the gates faded away, replaced by birdsong and the rustle of leaves in the spring breeze. Sophia walked without paying attention to where she was going, her mind replaying Harrison's words over and over. A burden, a decision he questioned. The tears she had been holding back finally spilled over, streaming down her face as she pushed deeper into the woods. Eventually, she came to a small clearing with a massive oak tree at its center. Exhausted emotionally and physically, she sank down at the base of the tree, drawing her knees to her chest. The quiet of the woods enveloped her, and for the first time since leaving Harrison's study, she allowed herself to truly feel the pain of his words. A sob escaped her, then another, until she was crying in earnest, her shoulders shaking with the force of her grief. Not just grief for today's harsh words, but for a lifetime of emotional distance, of feeling like an outsider in her own home, of wondering why the man who had chosen to be her father seemed to regret that choice. Every day. "Why?" she whispered to the empty woods. "Why did you take me if you didn't want me?" The question hung unanswered in the still air. Sophia had asked herself the same thing countless times over the years. Harrison Bennett was not a man who did anything without purpose, without calculation. Why adopt a child he had no interest in raising with warmth or affection? As her tears subsided, exhaustion took their place. Sophia leaned her head back against the rough bark of the oak, closing her eyes. She had no answers, only the cold certainty that she would never be enough for Harrison Bennett, no matter how hard she tried. The sound of movement in the underbrush startled her. Sophia's eyes flew open, half expecting to see Oliver or one of the estate staff sent to find her. Instead, a familiar black shape emerged from between the trees. "Eclipse?" Sophia whispered in disbelief. The horse stepped into the clearing, his ears pricked forward, intelligent eyes fixed on Sophia. He had clearly escaped from his stall, something he had never done before. Eclipse approached her slowly, as if sensing her fragile emotional state. When he reached her, he lowered his massive head and nudged her shoulder gently. Despite everything, Sophia found herself smiling through her tears. "How did you find me, boy?" she murmured, reaching up to stroke his velvet nose. Eclipse snorted softly, his warm breath tickling her tear-stained cheek. For a long moment, they stayed like that, girl and horse, connected in silent understanding. Then Eclipse stepped back and pawed at the ground, as if trying to tell her something. "What is it?" Sophia asked, pushing herself to her feet. The horse turned and walked a few paces back toward the way he had come, then stopped and looked back at her expectantly. "You want me to follow you?" Eclipse nickered, a sound Sophia chose to interpret as confirmation. Curious despite her emotional turmoil, she wiped away her tears and began to follow the horse through the woods. Eclipse led her on a winding path, occasionally stopping to ensure she was still behind him. After about 10 minutes, they emerged from the trees near the small lake on the Bennett property. This part of the shore was wilder than where Sophia had seen Grace earlier, with reeds growing tall at the water's edge and no manicured paths cutting through the natural landscape. Eclipse walked to the water's edge and stopped, turning his gaze to a spot on the ground near his front hooves. Sophia approached cautiously, unsure what he was trying to show her. "What is it, boy?" she asked, kneeling beside him. Eclipse pawed at the ground again, and Sophia noticed something glinting among the reeds. Reaching out, she carefully picked up a small object half buried in the soft earth. It was a locket oval, silver pendant on a delicate chain. Tarnished with age and exposure, it nevertheless retained an elegance that spoke of quality craftsmanship. The front was engraved with an intricate design of intertwined roses. Sophia turned it over in her palm, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Where did this come from?" Eclipse watched her intently, his eyes seeming almost human in their intelligence. With careful fingers, Sophia tried to open the locket. It was stiff with age, but after a moment's struggle, the tiny clasp gave way, and the pendant swung open. Inside was a small photograph, remarkably preserved despite the locket's exposure to the elements. It showed a young woman with dark hair and a warm smile, her eyes so similar to Sophia's own gazing directly at the camera with a mixture of joy and something that looked like mischief. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Though she had only the haziest memories of her birth mother, an instinctive recognition flared within her. "Mom?" she whispered, her finger gently tracing the tiny photograph. On the opposite side of the locket, there was an inscription in flowing script. "To Elena, my North Star. Forever yours, H." H. A single letter that sent Sophia's mind spinning with possibilities. Her birth mother's name had been Elena Morgan. That much she knew from the sparse information Harrison had shared over the years. But who was H? And how had this locket ended up here, on the Bennett estate? Eclipse nudged her again, his warm breath stirring her hair. Sophia looked up at him, wonder and confusion battling in her mind. "How did you know this was here?" she asked softly, knowing the horse couldn't answer but needing to voice the question nonetheless. Eclipse merely blinked his soulful eyes, as if the answer should be obvious. Sophia closed the locket carefully and slipped it into her pocket. A new determination straightened her spine as she stood. The mystery of the locket, of her mother's connection to someone whose name began with pushed aside her earlier despair, replacing it with purpose. "Come on, boy," she said to Eclipse. "We need to get back. I have some research to do." Eclipse snorted and fell into step beside her as they made their way back toward the stables. Sophia's mind raced with questions. The locket had clearly been lost for some time, possibly years. Had her mother visited the Bennett estate before her death? Before Sophia's adoption? And if so, why had Harrison never mentioned it? The secrecy surrounding her adoption had never bothered Sophia as much as Harrison's emotional distance. But now, with the locket weighing heavy in her pocket, she wondered if the two might be connected. As they approached the stables, Oliver hurried out to meet them, relief evident on his weathered face. "Miss Sophia!" "And Eclipse, we've been looking all over for both of you. How did he get out of his stall?" Sophia patted Eclipse's neck. "Sorry for the worry, Oliver. I think he sensed I was upset and came looking for me." Oliver's expression softened. Smart creatures, horses. Especially this one. He took Eclipse's halter. "Your father's been asking for you, miss. Seemed right concerned when no one could find you." Sophia doubted that. More likely, Harrison was irritated that she had walked out on their conversation. "I'll go see him later. I need to change first." Oliver nodded, leading Eclipse back into the stable. "He's in his study still, if you're looking for him." Sophia had no intention of seeking out Harrison anytime soon. Instead, she hurried to the side entrance of the mansion, hoping to reach her room unnoticed. Luck was with her. The main floor was quiet, the staff busy with afternoon tasks in other parts of the sprawling house. Sophia took the back staircase up to the second floor and slipped into her bedroom, closing the door firmly behind her. Her room was a reflection of the careful balance she'd struck between Harrison's expectations and her own personality. The furniture was elegant but comfortable. The color scheme sophisticated but warmed with personal touches, framed photographs, art she'd created, books she loved. It was both sanctuary and battleground, a space where she could be herself, but also where she often felt the weight of the Bennett legacy most acutely. Sophia went to her desk and opened the small drawer where she kept her most personal possessions. From the back, she retrieved a worn envelope containing the few items she had from her life before the Bennetts. A faded photograph of her mother holding her as a baby, her original birth certificate, and a newspaper clipping announcing Elena Morgan's death in a car accident when Sophia was 3 years old. With trembling fingers, she spread these items on her desk, then added the locket to their number. The photograph in the locket was different from the one she already had. Her mother looked younger, more carefree. And then there was the inscription, "To Elena, my North Star. Forever yours. H." H. A wild thought struck her. Harrison's first initial was H, but no, that was impossible. If Harrison had known her mother well enough to give her such a personal gift, why would he have hidden that connection? Why describe an A? Their relationship as peripheral when adopting Sophia? Unless he had something to hide. Sophia shook her head, trying to dismiss the thought. She was letting her imagination run wild, looking for conspiracy where there was likely only coincidence. And yet, she turned to her computer and opened a browser window. After a moment's hesitation, she typed, "Elena Morgan Harrison Bennett," into the search bar. The results were sparse and mostly irrelevant business articles about Harrison, obituaries for various Morgans unrelated to her mother, social media profiles of strangers. Sophia refined her search, trying different combinations of names and dates, but found nothing connecting her mother to Harrison before her adoption. Frustrated, she sat back in her chair, her gaze returning to the items spread before her. There had to be a connection she was missing. Eclipse had led her to that locket for a reason. She felt certain of it. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. Hastily, she gathered the papers and locket and returned them to the envelope, which she slipped back into her desk drawer. "Come in," she called, closing her laptop. The door opened to reveal Grace, her expression concerned. "Sophia, are you all right? Your father's been looking for you." Sophia turned in her chair to face the woman. "I'm fine. Just needed some time alone." Grace stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "He told me about your argument. He's worried about you." Sophia couldn't suppress a bitter laugh. "Worried about my grades, maybe. Not about me." Grace's gaze was sympathetic but firm. "That's not fair, Sophia. Your father cares about you deeply. In his way." "His way," Sophia repeated flatly. "His way is to call me a burden. To make me feel like adopting me was his greatest regret." Grace flinched slightly. "He said that?" "Not in those exact words," Sophia admitted, but the message was clear enough. Grace sighed and moved to sit on the edge of Sophia's bed. "Your father is complicated. He doesn't express emotion well. Never has." "That's no excuse," Sophia said, her voice hardening. "And it doesn't explain why he adopted me in the first place if he had no interest in being a real father." Grace was quiet for a long moment, her gaze thoughtful. "Have you ever asked him directly about why he adopted you?" "Of course I have. He gives the same vague answer every time, that he knew my mother through business connections and felt obligated when I was orphaned." Sophia hesitated, then decided to take a risk. "Grace, did my mother ever visit this estate before I was adopted?" The question seemed to catch Grace off guard. "Why do you ask?" Sophia chose her words carefully. "I found something today, near the lake. Something that belonged to my mother. It made me wonder if she had been here before." Grace's expression shifted, a flicker of something, recognition, concern, passing over her features. What did you find? Instead of answering, Sophia studied Grace's face. You knew her, didn't you? My mother. Grace stood abruptly. Sophia, I think this is a conversation you should have with your father. So, you did know her? Sophia pressed, rising as well. Was she more than just a business connection to Harrison? Is that why he won't talk about her? Sophia, please, Grace said, her composure slipping. This isn't my place. Then whose place is it? Sophia demanded. Harrison won't tell me anything. I have a right to know about my own mother. Grace moved toward the door. Talk to your father, Sophia. Really talk to him. Ask him about Elena. She paused with her hand on the doorknob. And when you do, remember that there are always multiple sides to every story. With that cryptic statement, Grace left, closing the door firmly behind her. Sophia stood in the center of her room, more confused than ever. Grace's reaction had confirmed her suspicions that there was more to the story of her adoption than Harrison had ever revealed. But what was it? What secret was so significant that both Harrison and Grace seemed determined to protect it? She returned to her desk and retrieved the envelope with her mother's items, including the locket. Opening it again, she studied the inscription more carefully. Forever yours, H. Forever yours. Those weren't the words of a casual business acquaintance. They were the words of someone deeply in love. The realization hit Sophia with the force of a physical blow. Could Harrison and her mother have been more than business associates? Could they have been lovers? The idea seemed both outlandish and strangely plausible. It would explain Harrison's reluctance to discuss Elena, his decision to adopt Sophia despite having no apparent interest in fatherhood. But if they had been involved romantically, why keep it a secret all these years? And why treat Sophia with such emotional distance if he had loved her mother? Sophia's head spun with possibilities, each more confusing than the last. She needed more information, something concrete to either confirm or dismiss her suspicions. Her gaze fell on her laptop. If she couldn't find answers through an internet search, perhaps there was another way. Harrison Bennett was notoriously protective of his privacy, but he was also a meticulous record keeper. His home office contained files going back decades and perhaps there was something there about Elena. The thought of snooping through Harrison's private files made Sophia uncomfortable, but her need for answers outweighed her hesitation. Besides, he was likely still in his study, giving her the perfect opportunity to search his bedroom office, a smaller, secondary workspace adjacent to his master suite, where he kept more personal records. Decision made. Sophia slipped the locket into her pocket and cautiously opened her door. The hallway was empty, the house quiet in the late afternoon lull before dinner preparations began in earnest. Harrison's master suite was at the opposite end of the hallway from her own room, a distance that had always seemed symbolic of the emotional space between them. Sophia moved quietly down the hall, her heart pounding. She had rarely entered Harrison's private domain, uninvited. It was an unspoken rule of the house that his personal space was off-limits unless specifically invited. At his door, she hesitated, then knocked softly. When no answer came, she tried the handle. It turned easily under her hand. Taking a deep breath, she slipped inside. Harrison's bedroom was exactly what one would expect: elegant, minimalist, and impersonal. A king-sized bed with crisp white linens dominated one wall, flanked by sleek nightstands with simple lamps. The walls were adorned with abstract art in muted tones, and the large windows offered the same impressive view of the grounds as Sophia's own room. To the right, a door stood ajar, leading to Harrison's private office. Sophia crossed the bedroom and entered the smaller room cautiously. Unlike the bedroom, the office showed signs of regular use. The desk faced the window, its surface neat but lived in, with a laptop, several file folders, and a leather-bound notebook arranged precisely. One wall was lined with bookshelves containing business texts, biographies, and a few classics. The opposite wall featured a built-in filing cabinet. Sophia's gaze was drawn immediately to the filing cabinet. If Harrison kept any information about her mother, it would be there. She crossed to the cabinet and began examining the drawer labels. Most contained business references, personal investments, property documents, tax records, but one drawer near the bottom was simply labeled personal. With a quick glance at the door, Sophia knelt and pulled open the drawer. Inside were several hanging folders, each neatly labeled. She flipped through them quickly: medical records, education, family history, until she came to one labeled Elena. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. She had found it. With trembling fingers, she removed the folder and carried it to Harrison's desk. Inside were several documents, photographs, letters, and what appeared to be legal papers. Sophia spread them across the desk, her heart racing as she began to examine them. The photographs showed her mother as Sophia had never seen her: young, vibrant, and clearly in love. In several, Elena was with a younger Harrison, his arm around her waist, his expression softer than Sophia had ever witnessed. One showed them on a boat, the wind whipping Elena's hair as she laughed into the camera. Another captured them outside a small cafe, their hands intertwined on the table between them. Sophia stared at the images, struggling to reconcile this smiling, affectionate Harrison with the cold, distant man who had raised her. These weren't casual business acquaintances, they were a couple deeply in love. Her hands shaking, she turned to the letters. Most were from Elena to Harrison, written in a flowing script Sophia recognized from the locket's inscription. She picked up one at random and began to read. Asterisk. My dearest Harrison. Asterisk. Asterisk the sunset. He reminds me of that evening in Santorini when you promised me the world. I hold you to that promise still, though I would trade all the world for just one more day with you right now. Asterisk. Asterisk. The project is going well, better than expected, in fact. The preliminary findings suggest our theory was correct all along. Matthews is furious, of course, but what can he do? The data speaks for itself. Asterisk, asterisk. I miss you terribly. These weeks apart feel like years. San Francisco is beautiful, but empty without you to share it with. I count the days until I return to Connecticut, to our secret place by the lake, where no one can find us. Asterisk, asterisk. All my love. Asterisk, asterisk. Elena asterisk. Sophia read the letter twice, then set it aside with a shaking hand. Our secret place by the lake. The same lake where Eclipse had led her to find the locket. The same lake that had been part of the Bennett estate for decades. She picked up another letter, this one dated a year later. Asterisk Harrison. Asterisk, asterisk. Your silence speaks volumes. I understand your concerns about the company, about your reputation, but surely we can find a way forward that doesn't involve denying what we feel for each other. Your father's disapproval is a storm we can weather together. If only you'd stand with me. Asterisk, asterisk. The project is at a critical juncture. Matthews is making moves to have me removed, claiming ethical concerns. We both know the only ethics he's concerned with are those that might interfere with Bennett Technologies' profit margins. I need your support now more than ever, both professionally and personally. Asterisk, asterisk, please call me. We need to talk about more than just the project now. Asterisk, asterisk, still yours, despite everything. Asterisk, asterisk, Elena asterisk. A third letter, dated 6 months later, revealed even more. Asterisk Harrison, asterisk, asterisk. She has your eyes. I thought you should know that, even if you've made it clear you want no part of our lives. Sophia is beautiful and strong, and someday she'll change the world with or without the Bennett name behind her. Asterisk, asterisk. I won't contact you again after this. You've made your choice, and I respect it, even if I can't understand it. But know this, should anything ever happen to me, she deserves to know her father. Not the corporate titan, not the tech visionary, but the man I fell in love with under the stars at Lake Geneva, the man who talked about making the world better, not just richer. Asterisk, asterisk. Goodbye, Harrison. Asterisk, asterisk. Elena asterisk. Sophia read the last letter, once, twice, 3 times, the words blurring through her tears. Her father. Harrison was her biological father. Not her adoptive father, but her real, biological father. The room seemed to spin around her as pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Her mother and Harrison had been lovers. They had worked together on some project that had created conflict with Bennett Technologies. Harrison had chosen the company over their relationship, and when Elena had become pregnant, he had abandoned them both. Until Elena's death. Until he had adopted his own daughter. Sophia was so absorbed in her discovery that she didn't hear the bedroom door open. She didn't notice Harrison's presence until his shadow fell across the desk. "What are you doing?" His voice was deadly quiet. Sophia looked up slowly. Harrison stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the scattered contents of the Elena folder. "You're my father," Sophia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My biological father." Harrison didn't deny it. He stepped into the office and closed the door behind him, his movements deliberate, controlled. "You had no right to go through my private files. And you had no right to lie to me my entire life." Sophia shot back, anger cutting through her shock. "Why? Why pretend to be my adoptive father when you're my real father? Why keep me at arm's length? Why make me feel like a burden when I'm your own flesh and blood?" Harrison moved to the window, his back to Sophia. For a long moment, he was silent, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. "It's complicated," he finally said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Then, uncomplicate it," Sophia demanded. "I deserve the truth. All of it." Harrison turned to face her, and for the first time, Sophia saw something vulnerable in his expression. "Yes," he said quietly. "You do." He gestured to the chair across from the desk. "Sit down, Sophia. This isn't a short story." Sophia remained standing, unwilling to cede even that small amount of control. "I'll stand. Thanks." Harrison nodded, accepting her defiance. He leaned against the windowsill, his gaze now fixed on the photographs spread across his desk. "I met your mother at MIT. We were both graduate students, she in biotechnology, I in computer science. We were part of a joint research project combining our fields." He picked up one of the photographs, Elena laughing on a boat end, studied it with an expression Sophia had never seen on his face before. Wistful, almost tender. Elena was brilliant, passionate. She saw possibilities where others saw roadblocks. "We fell in love quickly and deeply." Harrison set the photograph down carefully. "But there were complications." "Your father disapproved," Sophia said, recalling the letter's reference. "Because of the Bennett name?" Harrison's mouth twisted in a bitter smile. "Partly. My father was old school, believed in strategic marriages. Dynastic thinking. But it was more than that. Elena and I were developing technology that could revolutionize medicine, predictive diagnostics using AI. My father saw the profit potential immediately. But Elena, she wanted it to be accessible to everyone, not just those who could pay Bennett Technologies prices." Sophia began to understand. "You sided with your father." Harrison's gaze sharpened. It wasn't that simple. Bennett Technologies had investors, board members, responsibilities to shareholders. Elena's vision was beautiful, but financially untenable. We argued. I tried to find middle ground, but she saw any compromise as betrayal of our original mission. "So you chose the company over her," Sophia said flatly. "I chose stability," Harrison corrected. "A sure path forward for technology that could help millions, even if it didn't help everyone at once." He sighed heavily. "Elena left the project. Left me. I didn't know she was pregnant when she went. By the time I found out about you, she had already established a new life in California, made it clear she wanted nothing to do with me or the Bennett name." Sophia thought of the third letter. "But she wrote to you about me. She told you I had your eyes." Harrison looked at her directly then, and Sophia realized with a jolt that it was true, her eyes were his, the same unusual shade of gray-blue. How had she never noticed before? "Yes," he acknowledged. "She wrote." "I," responded poorly. "I was building what would become Bennett Technologies, working 20-hour days, fighting to establish myself outside my father's shadow. A child wasn't part of my plan, especially not with a woman who had become essentially an adversary in our field." "An inconvenience," Sophia said bitterly. "A burden." Harrison flinched at the word. "I thought so then. He admitted, I was wrong. But by the time I realized that, it was too late to fix things with Elena. And then, she died, Sophia finished for him. And suddenly you had to deal with me. When I got the call about the accident, about you being placed in foster care, I knew immediately what I had to do. Harrison's voice grew firmer. Not out of obligation, Sophia. Out of remorse. Out of the realization that I had failed Elena, failed you, and this was my chance to make it right. By pretending to be my adoptive father? By keeping me at a distance? By making me feel like I was never good enough? End quote. Sophia's voice cracked. How was any of that making it right? Harrison pushed away from the window, frustration evident in his movements. I didn't know how to be a father. I had no model for it. My own father was even more distant than I've been with you. And there was the company to consider, the public narrative. If it had come out that I'd abandoned my pregnant girlfriend, that I had a child I had initially rejected, so it was about the Bennett reputation, Sophia said coldly. Again. At first, Harrison admitted. But once you were here, once I got to know you. He stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. You were so much like her, so brilliant, so principled, and yet you had parts of me too, my determination, my focus. I was terrified of influencing you too much, of turning you into me instead of allowing you to be like her. Sophia stared at him, trying to process this new perspective. So you kept me at arm's length because you were afraid of corrupting me? Harrison met her gaze. I kept you at arm's length because I didn't believe I deserved to be close to you, not after what I did to Elena. Not after I chose ambition over family. His voice dropped. I thought giving you everything material, this home, your education, even Eclipse could somehow make up for what I couldn't give emotionally. The mention of Eclipse triggered a memory. The lake, Sophia said suddenly. Eclipse led me to the locket at the lake today. Was that the secret place my mother mentioned in her letter? Harrison looked surprised. Eclipse found Elena's locket? After all these years? He shook his head in disbelief. Yes, there's a small cove on the far side of the lake that was our meeting place during that summer before everything fell apart. Elena must have lost the locket there. I gave it to her for her birthday. To Elena, my North Star, Sophia quoted softly. Forever yours, H. Harrison's expression softened with a pain so raw, it made Sophia look away. I meant those words when I gave it to her. I just didn't have the courage to live by them. A heavy silence fell between them. Sophia felt emotionally drained, her anger giving way to a complex mixture of grief, confusion, and something that might, with time, become understanding. What happens now? She finally asked. Harrison straightened, his businessman's composure returning. That depends on what you want, Sophia. If you want the truth made public, I won't stop you. You have every right to claim your identity as my biological daughter. Sophia considered this. The revelation of her true parentage would cause a media frenzy, would change how the world saw both her and Harrison. But was that what she wanted? I don't care about the public narrative, she said slowly. I care about us, about whether anything can be salvaged from the mess you've made of our relationship. Harrison looked momentarily taken aback, then nodded. I would like that, he said quietly. To try to build something real between us. It's long overdue. It won't be easy, Sophia warned. I'm still angry. I still need time to process all of this. I understand, Harrison said. Take whatever time you need. I'll be here. There was something different in his voice, a warmth, a vulnerability that Sophia had never heard before. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. There's one more thing, Sophia said, remembering something from the letters. The project you and my mother were working on, what happened to it? Harrison's expression changed subtly. After Elena left, the development stalled. My father wanted to push forward with a commercialized version, but without Elena's expertise, it wasn't feasible. Eventually, we shelved it. He hesitated. Her research notes are still in the Bennett Technologies archives. No one has touched them since she left. I want to see them, Sophia said firmly. I want to understand what was so important that it came between you. Harrison studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll arrange it. Your mother's work deserved better than to be forgotten. Perhaps it's time for it to see the light again. Sophia gathered the letters and photographs, returned them to the folder, and handed it to Harrison. "I'd like copies of these," she said. "I have so little of her." "Of course," Harrison replied, taking the folder. "Sophia, He stopped, seeming to struggle with what to say next. "I never meant to make you feel like a burden. That was my failing, not yours. You have been the one truly good thing in my life, even if I've been too blind to show it." The words hung in the air between them, a first tentative bridge across the chasm of years of misunderstanding. Sophia didn't trust herself to respond without crying, so she simply nodded and moved toward the door. "Sophia," Harrison called as she reached for the handle. "The horse Eclipse. I didn't choose him randomly for your birthday. He's the foal of your mother's horse, Starlight. She loved that mare almost as much as she loved her work. When I saw Eclipse was available, I knew he had to be yours. Some connection to her that I could give you, even if I couldn't tell you why." This revelation, this small, meaningful gesture, hidden within what Sophia had always seen as just another expensive gift, was somehow more affecting than all that had come before. A sob escaped her before she could suppress her. "Thank you for telling me," she managed, then slipped out the door before Harrison could see her tears. Back in her own room, Sophia sank onto her bed, emotionally exhausted. She pulled the locket from her pocket and opened it again, studying her mother's smiling face. So many secrets, so many years of pretense and distance, all stemming from choices made before she was even born. A soft nickering drew her attention to the window. Eclipse stood in the garden below, his dark coat gleaming in the late afternoon sun. His gaze somehow fixed directly on her window, as if he knew, as if he had always known. Sophia moved to the window and pressed her palm against the glass. "Thank you," she whispered to the horse who had led her to the truth. Eclipse tossed his magnificent head, then turned and trotted back toward the stables, his mission accomplished. The next morning dawned clear and bright. The kind of perfect spring day that seemed to mock Sophia's emotional turmoil. She had slept fitfully, her dreams filled with fragments of the past as she had learned it her mother and Harrison in love, their bitter separation. Harrison's decision to adopt his own daughter rather than acknowledge her as his biological child. She dressed mechanically, not bothering with her usual care. What did it matter how she looked today? Everything had changed. The entire foundation of her identity had shifted beneath her feet. When she finally ventured downstairs, she found the house unusually quiet. Normally at this hour, staff would be bustling about, and Harrison would be in the breakfast room with his first cup of coffee and the financial papers. Today, however, the main floor seemed deserted. Sophia made her way to the breakfast room and was surprised to find Grace sitting alone at the table, a tablet and coffee cup before her. "Good morning, Sophia," Grace said, her tone gentle. "How are you feeling?" The simple question nearly undid Sophia's fragile composure. "How do you think I'm feeling?" she responded, more sharply than she had intended. "My entire life has been a lie." Grace nodded, unperturbed by Sophia's tone. "Yes, it has. I'm sorry for my part in maintaining that lie." "You knew," Sophia said flatly. "All this time, you knew Harrison was my biological father." "I did," Grace confirmed. "I was your mother's friend before I ever worked for Harrison. In fact, I was the one who introduced them." This revelation startled Sophia. "You knew my mother well?" "Very well. We were roommates in college, remained close after graduation. Elena was my best friend." Grace's expression softened with memory. "After she died, I sought out Harrison. I knew about you, knew he had adopted you. I wanted to be part of your life, to honor Elena in some way. Harrison needed an executive assistant, and I needed to be near you. It worked out." Sophia sank into a chair, processing this new information. "Why didn't you ever tell me? About my mother, about Harrison?" Grace sighed. "It wasn't my secret to tell, Sophia. Harrison made it very clear when he hired me that the official story was to be maintained at all costs." She reached across the table and covered Sophia's hand with her own. "But I've tried, in small ways, to share Elena with you. The books I gave you for your birthdays? They were her favorites." The colleges I suggested you consider? Places she had loved. Little breadcrumbs, hoping someday you'd find your way to the truth. Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. I wish I had known sooner. About all of it. I know, Grace said softly. For what it's worth, I urged Harrison many times to tell you the truth. He always said not yet, not until she's older. I think he was afraid of your reaction, of losing you entirely. Where is he now? Why is he now? Sophia asked, suddenly realizing she hadn't seen Harrison yet. In his study. He's been there since dawn, making some calls. Grace hesitated. He asked me to give you this when you came down. She handed Sophia a sealed envelope. And he asked that you meet him in the stables at 10, if you're willing. Sophia took the envelope with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. Did he say why? Grace shook her head. Only that it's important. Sophia turned the envelope over in her hands, then carefully opened it. Inside was a single sheet of Harrison's personal stationery, his precise handwriting filling the page. Asterisk. Sophia, asterisk. Asterisk words have never been my strong suit, especially when it comes to emotions. But you deserve to hear these words, even if they come too late and too inadequately. Asterisk. Asterisk. I am sorry. Sorry for the years of distance, for making you feel less than the extraordinary person you are, for failing to be the father you deserved. Most of all, I am sorry for denying you the truth about your mother, about myself, about the past that has shaped us both. Asterisk. Asterisk. There is nothing I can do to reclaim those lost years. But perhaps we can begin anew, with honesty between us at last. If you are willing, I would like to introduce you to your mother's work, the brilliant mind and passionate heart that made her who she was. It won't make up for her absence in your life, but it might help you know her better. And in knowing her, perhaps you might someday find it in your heart to understand, if not forgive, the flawed man who loved her and lost her through his own failings. Asterisk. Asterisk. Meet me at the stables at 10. There is something I want to show you. Asterisk. Asterisk. Harrison. Asterisk. Sophia read the letter twice, struck by the uncharacteristic humility in Harrison's words. In all their years together, she had never heard him apologize so directly, so without qualification. She checked the clock on the wall. It was just after 9. An hour until she was supposed to meet Harrison at the stables. Time enough to gather her thoughts, to decide what she wanted from this new, truthful chapter of their relationship. I'll be there, she told Grace, folding the letter and slipping it into her pocket. But first, I'd like to hear about my mother. From someone who knew her as a person, not just as a brilliant scientist or a lost love. Grace's face lit up with a warm smile. I'd like nothing better. Where should I begin? At the beginning, Sophia said, settling back in her chair. Tell me everything. For the next hour, Grace shared stories of Elena Morgan, her quick wit, her stubborn idealism, her habit of singing off-key while working in the lab, her love of thunderstorms and chocolate ice cream at midnight. With each anecdote, each remembered quirk and passion, Elena became more real to Sophia than she had ever been before. Not just a tragic figure from the past, but a vibrant, complex woman who had lived and loved, and fought for what she believed in. She would be so proud of you, Grace said, as their time drew to a close. Not because of your grades or your accomplishments, though those would impress her, certainly, but because of your heart, your spirit. You have her fire, Sophia, and her capacity for forgiveness, I think. Sophia wasn't so sure about that last part. The wound of Harrison's deception was still raw, the years of emotional distance not so easily forgotten. But hearing about her mother from someone who had truly known her had soothed something in Sophia's soul, had filled a void she had carried for as long as she could remember. Thank you, she said to Grace, rising from the table, for keeping her memory alive all these years, for being here, even when you couldn't tell me the whole truth. Grace squeezed her hand. It has been my privilege, Sophia. Now go. Harrison is waiting, and whatever he wants to show you, I suspect it's important. Sophia nodded and headed for the stables, her mind still processing all she had learned in the past 24 hours. The world looked different now, as if a filter had been removed, and she was seeing everything in sharper, clearer detail. As she approached the stables, she saw Harrison standing outside, dressed more casually than usual in jeans and a sweater. Beside him stood Eclipse, already saddled, along with another horse, a chestnut gelding that Sophia recognized as Harrison's rarely used mount, Pegasus. Pegasus. "You're going riding with me?" Sophia asked as she reached them, unable to hide her surprise. Harrison had not been on a horse in years, as far as she knew. Harrison nodded, his expression uncharacteristically nervous. "If that's all right with you. What I want to show you requires a ride to reach it." Sophia studied him. This man who was both familiar and suddenly a stranger, her father in truth, not just in name. "Lead the way," she said finally. Harrison's relief was palpable as he mounted Pegasus with the stiffness of someone long out of practice. Sophia swung into Eclipse's saddle with practiced grace, patting the horse's neck as she settled in. "Where are we going?" she asked as they set off at a walk, following one of the trails that led away from the main estate. "To the lake first," Harrison replied. "To the place where Eclipse found the locket. After that, well, you'll see." They rode in silence, the tension between them almost tangible. Sophia had so many questions, so many emotions swirling within her, but she held them back, waiting to see what Harrison had planned. The trail wound through the woods, dappled sunlight filtering through the new spring leaves overhead. After about 20 minutes, they emerged at the far side of the lake, in a small, secluded cove, sheltered by weeping willows. It was beautiful and private, exactly the sort of place where lovers might meet in secret. Harrison dismounted stiffly and tied Pegasus's reins to a low branch. After a moment's hesitation, Sophia did the same with Eclipse. "This was our place," Harrison said, gazing out over the water. "Elena and I would meet here when we wanted to escape the pressure of the project, the expectations of my father, the scrutiny of colleagues, just us, under these trees, planning our future." Sophia could almost see them, young Harrison and Elena, full of dreams and passion, not yet divided by the choices that would separate them forever. "What happened?" she asked softly. "Really happened, between you and my mother?" Harrison sighed heavily, running a hand through his silver hair. "Pride, ambition, fear, the usual human failings." He picked up a small stone and skipped it across the lake's surface. "Elena wanted our technology to be open source, available to any medical facility regardless of ability to pay. I saw the potential profit, yes, but also the practical reality that development on that scale would require substantial investment, corporate structure, patents to protect the work." End quote. "So it was just a business disagreement?" Sophia pressed, not quite believing it could be that simple. "No," Harrison admitted. "It became more than that. My father got involved, started pressuring board members, threatening to pull funding if Elena's approach was adopted. She stood her ground, God. She was magnificent when she was fighting for something she believed in." A faint smile touched his lips. "But I wavered, tried to play both sides. And when Elena discovered some of the backroom deals I'd made with pharmaceutical companies, she saw it as betrayal." "Was it?" Sophia asked bluntly. Harrison met her gaze directly. "Yes," he said simply. "I betrayed our shared vision because I was afraid to stand up to my father, afraid to risk failure if we went it alone. I told myself it was pragmatism, but it was cowardice." The raw honesty of his admission startled Sophia. This was not the Harrison Bennett she knew, the confident, sometimes arrogant business titan who never admitted weakness or mistake. "She left when she found out," Harrison continued, "resigned from the project, broke off our relationship, moved to California to start over. I was angry, hurt, convinced I was right and she was being idealistic and impractical. It took me years to realize the truth, that she had been the stronger one, the braver one." "And when you found out about me?" Sophia asked, voicing the question that had haunted her since discovering the truth. Harrison's face shadowed with shame. I reacted badly, told her it was impossible, that she must be mistaken about the timing, that I couldn't possibly be the father. Deep down, I knew it wasn't true. But I was building Bennett Technologies, fighting for credibility in the industry. A scandal, an illegitimate child. He shook his head. I chose reputation over responsibility. The single worst decision of my life. Sophia absorbed this, feeling the pain of his rejection even though it had happened years before she could possibly remember it. When did you change your mind? When did you decide to adopt me after she died? The moment I got the call, Harrison said quietly. There was no hesitation then. I knew immediately what I had to do. But by then, the narrative was established. The world, to her family, to everyone. I was just a business acquaintance stepping in out of obligation. It seemed easier, cleaner, to maintain that fiction than to explain the messy truth. Easier for you, Sophia pointed out. Yes, Harrison acknowledged. And I've paid for that selfishness every day since. Watching you grow up looking for a connection I was too cowardly to offer, seeing Elena's spirit in you, and fearing I would somehow crush it as I had failed her. They stood in silence for a moment, the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore, the only sound between them. This isn't all I wanted to show you, Harrison said finally. There's something else. Something I've kept hidden for 17 years. Something that belongs to you, by right. He gestured toward the horses. It's a bit further. Will you come? Sophia hesitated, then nodded. Despite everything, she was curious. What else could Harrison have kept from her all these years? They mounted again and rode deeper into the wooded property, following a trail that grew increasingly narrow and less maintained. After another 15 minutes, they came to a small clearing where a modern building stood, a single-story structure with large windows, all curves and glass, integrated so naturally into the landscape that it was almost invisible until you were upon it. What is this place? Sophia asked as they dismounted. Elena's lab, Harrison replied, producing a key from his pocket. Or rather, the lab I built for her that we were going to use together to develop our technology away from corporate interference. She never got the chance to work here. After she left, I couldn't bear to use it, but I couldn't bring myself to repurpose or demolish it either. So it sat here, preserved exactly as it was when I last walked out 17 years ago. He unlocked the door and stepped aside, allowing Sophia to enter first. Inside, the space was open and bright, with workstations arranged around a central area. Sophisticated equipment, now outdated but still impressive, lined the walls. Whiteboards covered in faded writing, complex formulas, diagrams. Hurried notes and two distinct handwritings stood frozen in time, like scientific cave paintings. This is where we were going to change the world, Harrison said softly from behind her. Just the two of us, following Elena's vision, not my father's or the corporation's. Sophia moved through the space, touching equipment gently, reading notes, absorbing the tangible history of her parents' shared passion. On one desk, she found a framed photograph she had never seen before, Harrison and Elena in lab coats, arms around each other, beaming at the camera. We were so young, Harrison said, looking over her shoulder at the photograph. So certain we could have it all, the work, the love, the future. And then my fear and pride ruined everything. Why are you showing me this now? Sophia asked, setting down the photograph. Harrison moved to a sleek cabinet against the far wall. Because it's time you knew the whole truth. And because of this. He opened the cabinet to reveal shelves of notebooks, external hard drives, and carefully labeled folders. Your mother's research. All of it. Everything she was working on before she left, including the seeds of what would have been our greatest achievement together. Sophia approached slowly, her heart pounding. The predictive diagnostic technology? Harrison nodded. Elena's part of it, the biotechnology component, was revolutionary. My contribution, the AI architecture, was good, but not the breakthrough hers was. Together, they could have transformed medicine, allowing diseases to be identified and treated before symptoms even manifested. He ran his fingers along the spines of the notebooks. After she died, I tried to resume the work, but without her, it wasn't the same. The heart was gone from it. Sophia stood silent, absorbing the magnitude of what Harrison was showing her. Not just a hidden building or old research materials, but the physical manifestation of what her parents had once shared: their work, their vision, their love. All preserved like a time capsule, waiting for her to discover it. "Why now?" she asked again. "Why show me this after keeping it secret for so long?" Harrison turned to face her fully, his expression more open and vulnerable than she had ever seen it. "Because yesterday, when you confronted me with the truth, I realized how much time I've wasted. How many years I've lost with you because of my cowardice, my inability to face the past." He gestured to the lab around them. "This place, this work, it's your heritage, Sophia. The best of both your mother and me. Before I lost my way, I should have shared it with you years ago." Sophia moved to one of the workstations and picked up a notebook, opening it to find pages of notes in what must be her mother's handwriting, precise yet flowing, with occasional exclamation points and small sketches in the margins. So different from Harrison's rigid, economical script. "I don't understand half of this," she admitted, leafing through the complex formulas and biological terminology. "You will," Harrison said with surprising confidence. "You have her brilliance, her intuition." And, Sophia prompted, when he hesitated. "And I want to restart the project. With you. Not for Bennett Technologies, not for profit, but for the original vision-accessible healthcare prediction for everyone, just as Elena wanted it." Harrison's words came faster now, with a passion Sophia had never heard from him before. "You're about to enter college. With your aptitude for both biology and computer science, you could pick up where we left off. I would fund it independently, outside the company structure. We could finally fulfill the promise Elena and I made to each other all those years ago." Sophia stared at him, stunned by the proposal. "You want me to finish my mother's work? Here, in this secret lab?" "Not just her work," Harrison corrected gently. "Our work. Yours and mine. Together." He took a deep breath. "I know I have no right to ask this of you. I know I've been a poor excuse for a father, biological or adopted. But this could be a new beginning for us, working side by side as Elena and I once did, bringing her vision to life at last." The offer was so unexpected, so contrary to everything Harrison had pushed her toward for years: corporate success, the Bennett legacy, pragmatism over idealism, that Sophia almost couldn't process it. "What about Bennett Technologies?" she asked. "What about all your speeches about responsibility to the company, to the family name?" Harrison's expression hardened slightly. "Bennett Technologies will continue without my direct oversight. I've been grooming my executive team for years. They're more than capable. As for the family name," he shook his head, "I spent my entire adult life worrying about the Bennett legacy. It's time I focused on a different legacy, the one I should have been building with you all along." Sophia set down the notebook, her mind racing. The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying: to work alongside Harrison, to get to know him not just as the distant father figure of her childhood, but as a partner, a collaborator, to connect with her mother through the work that had meant so much to her, to perhaps heal the wounds of the past while creating something meaningful for the future. "I need time to think about this," she said finally. "It's a lot to take in." Harrison nodded, seemingly unsurprised by her hesitation. "Of course. Take all the time you need. The lab has buy-in waiting nearly 2 decades. It can wait a bit longer." He gestured toward the door. "We should head back. It'll be lunchtime soon." As they rode back toward the main house, Sophia's thoughts were a whirlwind. The past 24 hours had upended everything she thought she knew about herself, about Harrison, about her place in the world. Her anger at his deception hadn't disappeared, but it was now tangled with other emotions: curiosity about her mother's work, appreciation for Harrison's unexpected vulnerability, and a tentative hope that perhaps, after all this time, they might find a way to be a real family. Eclipse seemed to sense her inner turmoil, moving with gentle steadiness beneath her, occasionally turning his head as if to check on her. This magnificent creature, she now knew, was her connection to her mother, the offspring of Elena's beloved horse, a living link to the woman she had never truly known. As they approached the stables, Sophia broke the thoughtful silence between them. I'd like copies of all her research. To study, to understand, before I make any decisions. Harrison looked over at her, relief evident in his expression. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a rejection either. I'll have everything digitized and transferred to your laptop by this evening. They reached the stables and dismounted, handing the horses over to Oliver with quiet thanks. As they walked toward the main house side by side, Harrison cleared his throat. Sophia, there's one more thing I should tell you. About your mother's accident. Something in his tone made Sophia stop walking. What about it? Harrison's face was grave. It may not have been an accident. Sophia felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. What do you mean? The technology we were developing had enormous potential value. There were competitors who would have gone to great lengths to acquire it. Harrison's voice was low, his eyes scanning the grounds around them as if even now he feared being overheard. Elena took key components of the research with her when she left. After her death, those components were never found. Are you saying she was murdered? Sophia whispered, horrified. I don't know for certain, Harrison admitted. The police investigation ruled it an accident car failure causing her to go off the road on a rainy night. But I've always had my suspicions. Elena was too careful, too skilled a driver. Sophia struggled to process this new revelation. Why didn't you push for a more thorough investigation? Harrison's expression clouded with old guilt. I tried, initially. But we weren't on speaking terms when she died. I had no standing to demand anything, and her family wanted closure, not conspiracy theories from the man who had abandoned their daughter. He sighed heavily. By the time I had adopted you and could have leveraged the Bennett name to reopen the case, years had passed. The trail was cold. And you're telling me this now because… Sophia prompted, a chill running down her spine. Because if we restart this work, if we pick up where Elena left off, there could be risks, Harrison said frankly. The technology is even more valuable now than it was. Then, if word gets out about what we're doing, you think whoever might have been responsible for her death could come after us. Sophia finished for him. Harrison nodded grimly. It's a remote possibility, but one you should be aware of before you decide anything. I would take every precaution, of course. Security systems, restricted access to the lab, encrypted communications. The Bennett resources would protect us. Instead of frightening her, this warning stirred something unexpected in Sophia's determination. If her mother had been murdered for her work, for her principles, then bringing that work to fruition would be the ultimate justice, the ultimate tribute. All the more reason to consider it carefully, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. As they resumed walking toward the house, a new thought occurred to Sophia. The locket, she said suddenly. Eclipse finding it now, after all these years. Do you think it means something? Harrison glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. I'm not usually one for signs or omens, but… He paused. Eclipse is unusual. Always has been. Intelligent beyond what's normal even for his breed. Elena believed animals had insights humans lack. She would say it was meant to happen, but he led you to the locket because it was time for the truth to come out. The idea was comforting somehow that her mother's horse had guided her daughter to the truth when the moment was right. It made the painful revelations of the past day feel less like chaos and more like destiny. They reached the main entrance of the house in companionable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Before they went inside, Harrison turned to Sophia one more time. Whatever you decide about the project, there's something I want you to know. His voice was quietly intense. You have never been a burden, Sophia. Never. My words yesterday were inexcusable, spoken from frustration and old guilt, not truth. From the moment you came into my life hour, let you have been nothing but a blessing. One I never deserved but have treasured nonetheless, even if I've been too broken to show it. The simple sincerity of his words, so unlike his usual measured statements, touched something deep in Sophia's heart. She didn't respond verbally. She wasn't ready for that level of forgiveness yet, but she gave a small nod of acknowledgement. As they entered the house, Mrs. Reynolds met them in the foyer. Lunch is ready in the garden room, she announced, then paused, looking between them with a knowing expression. Everything all right? Getting there? Harrison answered before Sophia could speak. One day at a time. The afternoon passed in a strange, suspended quiet. Sophia retreated to her room after lunch, ostensibly to study, but actually to process everything she had learned. Harrison disappeared into his study, presumably to arrange the digitization of Elena's research as promised. By evening, Sophia's laptop pinged with a notification. A shared folder had been added to her secure cloud storage, containing thousands of files organized with Harrison's characteristic precision. She spent hours scrolling through them, understanding only fragments, but feeling increasingly connected to the brilliant woman who had created them. Around midnight, unable to sleep despite her emotional exhaustion, Sophia found herself drawn once more to the stables. Eclipse greeted her with a soft nicker, pushing his nose into her hand as she entered his stall. "You knew all along, didn't you?" she murmured, stroking his velvet muzzle. "You knew who I was, who Harrison really is to me." Eclipse blinked his intelligent eyes, a gesture Sophia chose to interpret as confirmation. "Should I do it?" she asked softly. "Should I work with him, trying to finish what they started?" The horse nudged her pocket where the locket now resided, having been cleaned and restored to its former shine. Sophia laughed softly. "You're not subtle, are you?" She took out the locket and opened it, studying her mother's smiling face in the dim light of the stable. "What would you want me to do, Mom?" she whispered. "Can you forgive him? Can I?" Of course, there was no answer, only the gentle sounds of the horses and the distant call of an owl hunting in the night. Yet somehow, in the peaceful stillness of the stable, with Eclipse's steady presence beside her, Sophia felt a clarity begin to emerge from the emotional chaos of the past 2 days. Harrison had failed her mother, had failed her too, in many ways. But he was trying now, in his imperfect way, to make amends, to honor Elena's memory, to connect with the daughter he had kept at arm's length for so long, to fulfill the promise of their shared work. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but perhaps it could be the foundation for a different future. The next morning, Sophia rose early and dressed with care. She tucked the locket around her neck, drawing strength from its presence, from the connection it represented to both her parents, the mother she had lost and the father she was just beginning to know. She found Harrison in his study, already working despite the early hour. He looked up as she entered, his expression carefully neutral, giving no hint of expectation or pressure. "I've been thinking about your proposal," Sophia said without preamble. "About continuing my mother's work. Our work." Harrison set down his pen. "And I want to do it," she said firmly. "But I have conditions." A hint of a smile touched Harrison's lips. "I would expect nothing less. You are your mother's daughter, after all." The acknowledgement, so simple, so long overdue, warmed something in Sophia's chest. "First, this project stays separate from Bennett Technologies, permanently. No corporate takeover, no profit motivation." Harrison nodded. "Agreed. I'll set up an independent foundation, with both our names on the governance board. Second, I want to understand exactly what happened with my mother, the full story, no more secrets, about your relationship, about the project, about her death. Everything. It won't be easy to hear," Harrison warned. "But you deserve the whole truth. I promise to hold nothing back." "Third," Sophia continued, "we do this as partners. Not as father and daughter, not as Bennett patriarch and heir, but as equals. My input matters. My direction matters, even when it contradicts yours." Harrison looked momentarily taken aback, then thoughtful. "That may be the hardest condition for me to meet," he admitted. "Old habits die hard, but I will try, Sophia. You have my word." "And fourth," she said, touching the locket at her throat, "we named the technology after her, the Elena Morgan Predictive Diagnostic System. Her name, not ours, at the forefront." At this, Harrison's composure finally cracked. His eyes glistened with sudden moisture, and he had to clear his throat before speaking. "Nothing would honor her memory more appropriately," he agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "She was always the heart of the project, the visionary. It's fitting that her name should be its public face." Sophia nodded, satisfied. "Then we have a deal." Harrison rose from behind his desk and extended his hand formally. "Partners?" Sophia hesitated only briefly before taking it. Partners. As their hands clasped, Sophia felt a subtle shift in the air between them, not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. The chance to build something new from the wreckage of the past. Outside the study window, she caught a glimpse of Eclipse in the garden, his black coat gleaming in the morning sun. He seemed to be looking directly at her, his intelligent eyes knowing. Sophia smiled at him. A silent thank you for leading her to the truth that had shattered her world, and, perhaps, given her the chance to rebuild it into something better. 3 months later, Sophia stood in the renovated laboratory, deep in the woods of the Bennett estate. What had once been a time capsule of abandoned dreams was now a bustling, state-of-the-art research facility. New equipment complemented the carefully preserved original pieces, creating a bridge between past and present, between Elena's initial vision and the technology now available to bring it to life. Harrison worked at a nearby station, his silver head bent over a complex series of code simulations. He had stepped back from his day-to-day responsibilities at Bennett Technologies, naming a trusted lieutenant as acting CEO, while he focused on what he now called the only project that truly matters. The change in him over the past months had been remarkable. The distant, emotionally reserved businessman was still there, occasionally emerging in moments of stress or when corporate matters intruded. But more often now, Sophia caught glimpses of a different Harrison, passionate about the work, willingly deferring to her insights when her intuition echoed Elena's approach, even laughing occasionally at small successes or absurdities in their research process. They weren't healed, weren't a conventional father and daughter. Perhaps they never would be. But they were something else. New collaborators, partners in a shared mission, joined by the ghost of the woman they had both loved in different ways. "Sophia," Harrison called, breaking into her reflections. "Come look at this." She moved to his workstation, where a simulation was running on his monitor. "The new algorithm?" Harrison nodded, a rare smile lighting his usually serious face. "It's working. Predictive accuracy at 78%, almost double our last attempt." Sophia studied the data, excitement building. "And, with my biomarker refinements, we might push that above 80%. "Exactly what I was thinking." Harrison turned to look at her, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. "We're close, Sophia. Closer than Elena and I ever got. Another 6 months, maybe a year, and we could have a working prototype. A prototype that could predict illnesses before symptoms appear," Sophia mused, the implication still staggering to her despite months of working toward this goal. "That could save thousands of lives. Millions, eventually," Harrison corrected. "Once it's fully implemented, available worldwide as your mother envisioned." "Your mother?" Not Elena, not Dr. Morgan, but your mother. The small acknowledgement still had the power to touch Sophia deeply. These verbal recognitions of their true relationship that had become more frequent as the months passed. A sound from outside interrupted their moment of shared triumph, the distinctive whinny of a horse. Sophia moved to the lab's large windows to see Eclipse standing at the edge of the clearing, watching the building with his characteristic intensity. "Your daily visitor," Harrison observed, coming to stand beside her. Punctual as always. It had become Eclipse's habit to appear at the lab each day around this time, as if checking on their progress. Sophia would take a break, go outside to greet him, sometimes walk with him a short distance before returning to work. She found these interludes calming, centering a connection to the force that had started her on this journey of discovery. "I think I'll take him to the lake today," she decided. "Clear my head a bit before we start the new biomarker tests." Harrison nodded. "Take your time. Science benefits from perspective." Another changed the man who had once measured productivity in hours worked and results achieved, now understood the value of reflection, of stepping back to see the broader picture. Outside, Sophia approached Eclipse with a smile. "Hello, handsome," she greeted him, stroking his gleaming neck. "Ready for a walk?" The horse nudged her pocket where she still carried the locket, now a talisman of sorts that accompanied her everywhere. Sophia laughed and pulled it out, opening it to show him the photograph inside. "Yes, it's still here, still keeping watch over us." Eclipse snorted softly, seemingly satisfied, and fell into step beside her as she headed toward the lake path. They walked in companionable silence, the late summer sun warm on their backs, the woods alive with the sounds of birds and small creatures going about their business. At the lake's edge, at the secluded cove where it had all begun, Sophia paused. The water was calm today, reflecting the blue sky and wispy clouds overhead like a perfect mirror. "We're going to do it, you know," she told Eclipse, who stood attentively beside her. "We're going to finish what they started, make her dream real." The horse's intelligent eyes seemed to understand, to approve. "And Harrison?" Sophia hesitated, testing her own feelings. "He's trying, really trying, not just with the work, but with me. It's not perfect, but it's something real, finally." Eclipse nudged her again, this time more insistently, pushing her a few steps to the left. Sophia looked down, curious about what had caught his attention. There, half hidden among the reeds just as the locket had been, was a small leather-bound book. Sophia knelt and carefully retrieved it, brushing away dirt and dried leaves. A journal, its pages warped from exposure but still largely intact. She opened it with gentle fingers to find Elena Morgan's distinctive handwriting filling the pages. Her mother's diary. Another piece of the puzzle, another gift from Eclipse. With trembling hands, Sophia opened to a random page and began to read. Asterisk, October 12, 2006, asterisk asterisk. Harrison and I argued again today about the direction of the project. He's under tremendous pressure from his father, I know, but I wish he could see beyond the immediate corporate interests to the greater potential of what we're creating. This isn't just another tech innovation. It could fundamentally change how we approach healthcare, make early intervention possible for so many who currently fall through the cracks of our broken system. Asterisk asterisk. And yet, despite the tension, I can't imagine doing this work with anyone else. Harrison's brilliance complements mine in ways I never anticipated when we first met. Where I see biological systems, he sees patterns of data. Where I intuit connections, he builds frameworks to test and validate them. Together, we're creating something neither of us could manage alone. Asterisk. Asterisk. Is that why I stay, despite the increasing interference from Bennett Sr.? Is that why, despite our arguments, I find myself in his arms each night, planning our future together? Love and intellectual partnership so intertwined, I can no longer separate them? Asterisk. Asterisk. Whatever happens with the project, I know this much. Harrison Bennett has changed me, has opened my world in ways both thrilling and terrifying. I only hope that when the moment of truth comes, when we must decide between profit and purpose, he remembers what brought us together in the first place, the dream of changing the world, not just succeeding in it. Asterisk. Sophia closed the journal, her vision blurring with tears. Here was her mother's voice, clear and direct across the years, revealing the complexity of her relationship with Harrison, the professional admiration, the personal connection, the brewing conflict that would eventually tear them apart. Eclipse nudged her shoulder gently, his breath warm against her cheek. "Thank you," Sophia whispered, clutching the journal to her chest. "For this, for the locket, for everything." The horse nickered softly, as if to say, "You're welcome." Sophia rose, brushing dirt from her knees, the journal in one hand, the locket in the other, tangible connections to both her parents, to the past that had shaped her, to the truth that had been hidden for so long. "Let's go back," she said to Eclipse. "Harrison should see this." As they walked back toward the lab, Sophia found herself thinking about circles closing, about patterns completing themselves. Her mother's horse's offspring had led her to discover her true parentage. Her father had finally found the courage to embrace the relationship he had denied for so long. And now they were working together to fulfill Elena Morgan's vision, to create something that could help millions. It wasn't a perfect resolution. The years of deception and emotional distance couldn't be erased, only understood and gradually healed. Harrison would always carry the guilt of his choices, and Sophia would always feel the absence of the mother she had barely known. But as Eclipse walked beside her, steady and knowing, Sophia felt something she had rarely experienced in the Bennett household. Peace. Not the false peace of secrets kept and truths denied, but the genuine peace that comes from facing reality, however painful, and finding a way forward together. At the lab door, she paused and looked back at the path they had traveled from, the main house with its imposing grandeur, to this hidden place of creativity and collaboration. From lies to truth. From isolation to connection. Eclipse watched her, his intelligent eyes reflecting the journey they had taken together. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Sophia said softly. "You were just waiting for the right moment to show me." The horse tossed his magnificent head, and Sophia could have sworn he was smiling. She slipped the locket around her neck and clutched the journal tightly. Then, with Eclipse's watchful gaze following her, Sophia opened the door and stepped back into the lab where Harrison waited back into the future they were building together, guided by the truth a horse had helped her find. Inside, Harrison looked up from his work, his expression shifting to curiosity as he noticed the journal in her hands. "What's that?" he asked, setting aside his tablet. "Another gift from Eclipse," Sophia replied, carefully placing the weathered journal on the workstation between them. "My mother's diary. He led me right to it, just like he did with the locket." Harrison's face paled slightly as he reached out with hesitant fingers to touch the journal's worn cover. "I gave her this," he said softly. "For her birthday, the same year as the locket. She used to write in it every evening." He looked up at Sophia, a question in his eyes. "Have you read it?" "Just one entry," Sophia admitted. "About your work together, your relationship, the conflicts that were beginning to emerge." Harrison nodded, his expression somber. And I think we should read it together," Sophia said decisively. "All of it. The good and the bad. The love and the arguments. The whole truth of who you were to each other, of how it all fell apart." For a moment, she thought he might refuse, might retreat back into the emotional distance that had defined their relationship for so long. But then, Harrison straightened, squared his shoulders, and nodded. "You're right," he said. "No more half-truths. No more selective sharing. Together." Sophia felt something shift between them, another small step toward genuine connection, toward the relationship they might have had all along, had fear and pride not interfered. Outside the lab windows, Eclipse still stood in the clearing, watching. As Sophia glanced his way, the horse seemed to nod once, then turned and trotted back toward the woods, his mission accomplished. "Thank you," Sophia whispered after him, too softly for Harrison to hear. The horse who had shown her the truth had given her one final gift, not just the journal itself, but the courage to share it with Harrison, to face their complicated past together, rather than alone. To build a future on honesty rather than convenience. To honor Elena Morgan's memory by becoming the family she had always wanted them to be. As she turned back to Harrison, who was carefully opening the journal to its first page, Sophia touched the locket at her throat and smiled. They had a long way to go, father and daughter, colleagues and partners. But, thanks to Eclipse, they had finally found the path. To Elena, Harrison said softly, raising his eyes to meet Sophia's. "My North Star, your mother, who brought us together in the end, despite everything." To Mom, Sophia agreed, her voice steady and sure, "who never stopped believing in either of us." And somewhere in the woods, a black horse galloped freely under the summer sun, his mission complete, the truth revealed at last.